Just to be clear for the record, I did slip and fall 4 times while hitting the begin stream button here tonight. It is the Coffee Corner podcast. I'm paying homage is what
All
it is.
right, Kadarius. Yeah.
I didn't drop anything, but I did lose my footing reaching for the button. We'll talk about Cole Ragans losing his footing here on the Kaufman Corner podcast. Not too much. We want to dive into the fact that Rany and I both picked this team. And we're quite proud of the fact that we were picking this team to win 77 games. Right now, they're on pace to win 50. What did we miss? What did the Royals miss? What all went wrong? What can be learned from this? Where do the Royals underachieve? How do they put this into a good use for the future? We talk about it all right now on the Kaufman Corner podcast.
You're listening to Kaufman Corner, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany and the Royals, and former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here's your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
Well, I hinted at it, Randy. We had quite an ending to Cole Ragans' performance. Let's start right there. By the way, I'll mention to you that we're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems, they've been making them disappear for almost 30 years. Started doing it in 1994, the most experienced, best of the business when it comes to restriping, resurfacing, building new, your parking lot, anything. If it deals with the parking lot, you can rely on Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Go to GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. That was weird, Rany. What did you think of these? And if people haven't seen it, you can just Google it and you'll see the pitches where he literally comes off his feet. Little bit of nerves after watching that today.
You and I had planned before today's game to go big picture, 30,000 foot view. Let's look at the forest and not the trees. But after the way Cole Ragans' outing today ended, we felt like we had to at least discuss it briefly because he is, one of the two biggest bright spots of the season for the Royals, and it's not really close. And anything that threatens that legacy is terrifying. And yeah, what we saw, he had another incredible Cole Ragans start, allowed one hit, through going into the sixth inning. He was a little wild, uncharacteristically wild all game, but nothing I was at all concerned about. And then he did something I'm not sure I've ever seen before. He threw 3 wild pitches in a row, and these weren't just wild pitches in the box score. They were wild pitches. The sort of thing where if you look at the MLB app, the 3 pitches literally do not appear on the screen when you look at where they are placed, where you have a picture or a silhouette of the batter in the strike zone and about 5-10 feet around. They are nowhere to be seen. If you've seen the video, it appears that on at least 2 of the 3 pitches, his foot slipped, but only on 2 of the 3 pitches. And then the ball 4, which is his last pitch of the game, was less wild than the other ones. It was actually caught by the catcher, but it was also like 3 feet above the strike zone. After the game, Matt Quatraro did have a quote. He caught a spike twice and then just lost feel for the ball on those other 2 pitches. It's a complete outlier, and I've never seen anything like it. Well, I agree with Mr. Quatraro on one thing. It is a complete outlier, and I've never seen anything like it either. it's the just lost feel for the ball on those other two pitches that has me tiny bit nervous. 5% nervous, but the 5% is like, did we just see a Rick Keel sort of outing? I doubt it. Again, the mound he slipped on the mound. I think between innings, the Blue Jays ground crew came out and raked the mound and tried to fix it. But I will say that I'm going to be even more interested than I normally am in a Cole Ragans start the next time he takes them out, and I will be holding my breath through that first inning to make sure that he has no troubles throwing his strikes. Because if he has suddenly lost the strike zone, well, he wouldn't be the first hard-throwing Royals left-hander in the last 4 years to have done so. Cough, Asa Lacy. But it would just be an incredible capper to what's been a terrible season for the Royals' biggest pitching bright spot to suddenly have questions going into 2024. So let's hope that's not the case.
Right. Do you have any worry about it being injury?
Yeah, I mean that's all. Of course, that's also a concern. I will say he slipped and fell, so that part of it I'm not as concerned about. But my hope is he was just sort of like shaken up a little bit and got out of his rhythm and sort of out of his delivery. I know one of the pitches was what came in at 97. The other two were breaking balls. His final pitch of the game was 94. I think it was a cutter, and I mean his velocity was in this basically in the zone he's normally in. So I'm hopeful that it is not. But of course, this is a guy who's had 2 Tommy John surgeries. There's the baseline level of worry about him getting hurt in a start is elevated relative to most pitchers. So yeah, that's always a consideration. But honestly, an injury at least has a timetable. Whereas if it were suddenly a development of, what they call the yips is a much more unpredictable phenomenon. Again, I'm 95% sure he'll be fine, but that 5% is enough to just make it something we need to discuss and to be on the lookout for in his next outing.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is. I think we wait and see if he's back to being the Cole Ragans we've known for the last month or so, then everything, all worries are gone. If all of a sudden Cole Ragans is not throwing at the same velocity, not finding the strike zone, then something's really wrong, and they better get to the bottom of it quickly, because it is, as you said, one of the few success stories that they really have, one of the 2 big ones, he and Bobby Witt Jr., of course, which takes us to what we'd planned to talk about, which is what went wrong. What led us to believe that a team coming off a 97 loss season, 65 wins, was going to improve by a dozen games? How do we misread it so bad? I've been going through my checklist and what I was missing. And they didn't think the team was going to be this bad. Now, let's start with this. Do you really think this was an evaluation year when they sent Sale, or do you think that became the convenient? All right, we can try this once, and we can play this card once, and we're going to play it right now because we need it. Like let's start there to what their baseline was. Was this an evaluation year in their mind, do you think?
Well, before we go down this road, we should say the obvious caveat, which is if you're asking why we thought the team would improve as much as we thought they would, we have to acknowledge the possibility that the reason is simply that you and I are both idiots.
Fact.
Yeah, I mean that is absolutely front and center here. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know what you were thinking. As for what the Royals were thinking,
doesn't it look pretty obvious right now? Like as I look back on it, I'm like,
it does, which is
swept up in hope springs eternal. And
look, I've been writing about and analyzing baseball for close to 30 years now, and I actually think my track record for Major League Baseball and predicting which teams will be good and bad in any given year is actually over the long run pretty damn good. And I'll put my track record up against most people, with the exception of the Royals, because I just cannot keep my emotions out of it. My natural optimism coupled with my impatience as a fan. So I feel like I'm either too optimistic or too pessimistic at any given time. So yes, that may have been part of the problem. But there are some reasons. We'll get to that. As for what the Royals were thinking, yeah, I think this, it's an evaluation year. I think that's a convenient thing to say now. I certainly do not think they thought they would lose 100 games with 3 weeks left in the season or come anywhere close to that. Did they think that they were going to contend? Probably not. I don't think they thought they were going to regress this season. And I think that is a little bit of an excuse. And when John Sherman says it's an evaluation year, the one thing I want to say that I hope is true is that it's not just an evaluation year for the players. It needs to be an evaluation year for the front office and for everybody involved in this team. Because, if you're not evaluating every aspect of your organization, if you're not turning over every rock after a year in which you're going to lose maybe 110 games, then you're doing yourself a disservice, because this is the kind of season that has to make you question everything you thought you knew about this organization. It's made me question everything I thought I knew about the organization, and that's why we're doing this.
I think they expected better. Certainly, I don't think anybody, 50 and 112 is not what. I don't know that anybody ever set sail thinking that's where you'd go. And I do have reason to believe, so I think it's important. They thought they were going to be better, and I think I think teams don't have realistic views of themselves, right? Like, I think just the adage when it's like, you look at other teams and you think they have 2 or 3 prospects. You look at your own team and you think you have 20. Right? Like, your guys and you're rooting for them, and you get involved with the personal side of things. And so you start to believe that they're better than they are. And I think that's true with the Royals. I think had they stayed healthy, let's start there. What did we miss? We did not plan for injury, right? And injury always happens.
Right. Well, injury always happens. Were they more injury prone than most teams? I don't feel like they were.
I think that they were, okay, let's put it this way. They were thinner than we gave them credit for.
That I agree. That is absolutely, that's on my list. They didn't have nearly the depth that a team needs. Their bad players were horrible. Like, let me give you some numbers I actually prepared for you. I picked these 4 players because they're representative, but also because at least in 3 of these 4, the Royals made an error of judgment this winter, and that's Jackie Bradley Jr., Hunter Dozier, and Franmil Reyes. And then I'll throw in Nate Eaton as the 4th, which, okay, he was a prospect coming up.
Jackie Bradley Jr. wasn't signed till spring training, right? I guess that's technically still weird.
Yeah, but at the point, they didn't have the depth, right? But those 4 players alone.
And who was the last one? Hunter Dozier, Bradley Jr.
Bradley Jr., Franmil Reyes.
Right.
So again, I mean, they signed to basically be their starting designated hitter and was released by the end of April. But, in that time was pretty terrible. And then Nate Eaton, who doesn't really fit with the other 3. He's a prospect coming up from the system, but had a promising cup of coffee last year. And nobody expected him to have, an 0.75 batting average, which is going to go down as one of the 5 worst batting averages by any position player in Major League history, with at least 50 at bats. So you combine those 4 guys together and 299 at bats. So about a half season's worth of an everyday player, a 147 batting average, 204 on base, and a 227 slug. Like, I don't know for sure that Zach Greinke could have done that if they had just let him bat in their place. Because Zach Greinke is 39 years old, but I'm pretty sure.
Yes. What an unfair shot.
What?
No, it's totally fair.
But I'm just saying, 29-year-old Zach Greinke, I'm pretty sure could have matched those numbers and probably exceeded them. I'm just saying, like, that alone, though, is, responsible for a significant portion of the underachievement, right? It's okay to be replacement level at the bottom of your roster. That's what replacement level is. It's not okay to be way below replacement level. And the Royals just did not have the depth to handle inevitable injury, or really in the case of some of these guys, they were actually, it was an error of evaluation that they started the season with Hunter Dozier in their in their everyday lineup. Franmil Reyes, like, you could say Hunter Dozier, fine, they were giving him one last chance because of that contract. They chose Franmil Reyes. Jackie Bradley maybe wasn't supposed to be starting every day, but he was their fourth outfielder that they were going to play a lot. And, on the basis of his defense, and they just didn't evaluate that his bat was completely done for. So that's part of it. That's not my number one thing, but that is definitely on the list.
Yeah, and I'll say, just to kind of dovetail on what you're talking about there with those individuals, like a Jackie Bradley Jr., like the story with Jackie Bradley Jr., like each of those guys, Nate Eaton, I don't lump him into this. Like Jackie Bradley Jr. is kind of his own case. Like, you know what the story is on Jackie Bradley Jr.? Don't sign guys for $900,000 because you get what you pay for. Right? If you're going in, you'd be better off just what they ended up doing was playing a guy who wasn't any good either. Right? Nate Eaton, like better off just set sail. If you're not going to cough up real money, and I'm trying to look here. Hang on, I'm looking for the outfield spot. Let me just refine this search because you're going to get what you pay for, and I'm looking here like let's just go average salary. Down in that level, there's just nothing. Like the only guys who were signed for less was Jason Hayward actually signed, or did he just get claimed? This says he was signed, but Jason Hayward at 720, Aaron Hicks at 720, Jackie Bradley Jr. at 900.
Well, basically all of those guys were released. They were on existing contracts and released, and therefore you can basically
for the minors, right?
You can,
or for the
you
minimum.
basically can sign him for the minimum.
Right.
But the problem is essentially that even though he wasn't given a guaranteed contract, he essentially came into camp with a guaranteed spot on the roster. Like it's one thing to have a non-roster guy.
But hang on, I just want to be clear. Who? Tell me when you hear a name that did something, right? Adam Engel, Steven Piscotty, Franchi Cordero, Tim LaCastro, Dominic Smith, Robbie Grossman, Corey Dickerson. I'm at $2.25 million. Kevin Pillar, Andrew McCutcheon, $5 million. Yeah. $5 million, right? How did Aroldis Chapman do? He did great. How much they signed him for? $6 million.
Well, it was 3 plus incentives. Yeah, but the point is $3 million is still better than 900,000.
Right.
Your point is well taken.
The point is there is no point in taking guys that are league minimum guys. There's no point. Whatever you have because they're not any better than whatever you're going to put up into your system. That's like, to me, that was the thing. And it's like, we're like, oh, well, and of course, as fans and me, myself, I'm like, well, he's a really great defender. This is Rays baseball. And if he can just hit a little bit, this is the way the Rays have done things. No, like that's the lesson on that. You just threw away the $900,000.
Right. Well, and again, I don't mind signing guys as non-roster invitees who then have to earn their way on the roster. They have to actually show you something, right? I mean, there's sometimes, especially with like pitchers who are come back from injury. The Royals got like Ryan Madsen this way a few years back and got some good years out of him. Heck, Mike Minor, I think, may have been on that list. Even this year, I mean, you look at like Matt Duffy on the roster. Hasn't been a world beater, but has been like a useful last guy on the roster. But he actually had to earn his way on. Whereas someone like Jackie Bradley, they signed him kind of sight unseen. Like, this guy's going to be on the roster the moment we signed him. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute, he actually can't hit anymore. And they had to give him that opportunity before, finally cutting bait with him. But all of this is small potatoes. I still feel like this is not the biggest.
No, I agree. But since you brought these guys up, I listen, and I'll even object to Matt Duffy's 621 OPS. I mean,
it's certainly not a solution. I agree.
Yeah, I mean that like likewise. I think that they're getting what they're paying for, and they'd be better off just playing their own guys. Right. That to me is the one thing I saw here is like it's clearly why it was an evaluation year when they started, because they were trying to grab some guys to supplement it, and they were grabbing guys that were no better. And had they broken with Michael Garcia, like would they have been worse? No, obviously.
That's why exactly. That's why I think it's easy to say they pivoted into this becoming an evaluation year in May when they cut Hunter Dozier and Fred Miller. But yeah, you can't go into the season with those guys on the roster and say, we're playing the young guys. But I will say that if we're looking for my number one reason why I projected the Royals to be so much better than they were, or the Royals were so much worse than they should have been, however you want to frame it, is not the old dudes. It's the fact that all those young players who made their major league debut, young hitters who made their major league debut last year, with the exception of Bobby Witt, no one took a step forward. No one even came close. All right. Okay. Bobby Witt, all power to him. And I think especially in the context of the players around him, deserves even more credit for developing into a star. But forget the stars, where are the established, solid, average position players from that entire wave that was drafted starting in 2018, actually no 2017 with Prado and Melendez, all the way through 2019. We're talking so Nick Prado, no, sorry, didn't take a step forward, hasn't been terrible, but this is I think the most important thing to note with Nick Prado. Nick Prado has half as many plate appearances as Bobby Witt this year. He has 302 plate appearances. Bobby Witt came in today with 609. Nick Prado has more strikeouts than Bobby Witt. Like, that's all you need to know. Nick Prado is being eaten alive by the strikeout, and he didn't take a step forward. MJ Melendez, not a step forward. Step backward, probably both offensively and defensively. Vinny Pasquantino was fine, but then he got hurt.
Well, and I want to mention that's like, and he's supposed to be the middle of the order thumb. Right. So like that is an injury that that this club cannot overcome.
Well, we have to hope that he comes back 100%. Before he started playing hurt, presumably, I think he was there. But yes, he's a question mark now for the future. Absolutely.
No, but I mean, but that's where I say the injury front, like they're not deep enough. However we want to describe it, they can't. Other teams can overcome a middle of the order back because they have 5 guys that are good enough to bat there. The Royals had 1 guy, and Bobby Witt Jr. has really been a revelation over the last couple of months. They had 1 guy starting the year that was actually good enough to bat in the middle of the lineup, and he got hurt.
Right, he got hurt. But this is when we talk about the injuries, he's really the only one of these guys who I would say injury has played a huge part in
on the position side.
On the position side, right? But the position side to me is more disappointing than the pitching side this year. Not even close. Michael Massey has been a big disappointment. Like,
well, can I just, and I know we'll come around to it. Can I just say, when you say the hitting side's been a bigger disappointment to me than the pitching side, the pitching has been abysmal. And so to say that points to how bad we misjudged how good the pitching would be, because it's deplorable. And
I didn't expect it to be good. Like I actually stupidly
then why would we have picked them? Why would, again, that comes back to us being morons. Why would we have picked pitching that bad to be within 5 games of 500? That's on us.
Well, true. Absolutely. But I will say this. The reason is I stupidly thought the offense might actually be above average this year. Like, I actually thought the Royals might be like 6th or 7th in the league in runs scored, and then maybe like 11th or 12th in runs allowed. So they're terrible in both.
Our bold and daring predictions, and at the end of the year when we review them, there'll be one that will be.
Well, there's the one I think
that are humorous. But.
Yes, but there's the one. Yes, there is one, but I think it was misunderstood. But ultimately, yes, I thought the offense. I think I know which one you're talking about. If the pitching basically were average, the Royals would be a playoff team, because I thought the offense would be that good. It turns out the pitching was so bad. I'm saved from that prediction. But the point is, the Royals are right now 12th in the league in runs scored, 14th in runs allowed. The pitching is worse than the hitting, but I thought the hitting would actually be decent, and it's not, because nobody aside from Bobby Witt has taken a step forward. I mean, let's put it this way: only 3 position players on the entire team, aside from Bobby Witt, have been worth even 1 win above replacement. One of them is Maikel Garcia, who wasn't on the list of guys we were even counting on for this year. One of them is Kyle Isbell, and that's purely for his insane defensive numbers, which I think, he's a very good defender. Maybe those numbers are a little overblown, but certainly not from his offense. And then, of course, the best position player on the team besides Bobby Witt, the star of their youth movement, backup catcher Freddie for me. All right, but nobody else. Drew Waters, he's probably shown more progress than Prado and Melendez and Michael Massey, but still hasn't really taken that step forward. It's that collective failure of all of these young hitters, 23 to 26 years old, that we thought would take a step forward, maybe a dramatic step forward. None of them, other than the most obvious one, none of them other than the true star that we expected to be the cornerstone, have taken a step forward. Most of them taken a step backwards. That, to me, was the death knell of our prediction that they'd even be mediocre.
Yeah, and I'll add in. Listen, there's just too many high picks that aren't doing anything for this team right now.
Yeah.
I like that's a big thing. Bobby Witt Jr. is supposed to be good. He is good, great. There's and we didn't put enough into. You can't be a team that's down there picking 4th and 3rd and be getting nothing from those guys, right? Like, because it's not just the record at the big league level; it's the fact that the minor leagues we're not seeing a lot of progress. But I want to point this out. Like it's also the guys who like Edward Olivares has an OPS of 757. You said, where are the average players? Well, there he is with the bat, but you can't play him in the field, right? That's the problem, is that even if they hit like an average guy, Edward Olivares hits like a good, solid, average ball player. He can't field. He has no position. And so I think one of the things that we did talk about and we did call out is this team doesn't fit. And we set sail with the idea that they would make it fit. MJ Melendez would either start to take to the outfield. I mean, really, when they left spring training, he was still catching, right? So he was going to catch and play the outfield. And that's one thing that, like, and we bitched about it. And we said, like, what are you doing? Find his position, put him there. If he's outfield, play outfield. And quickly in the year, they did that. But as I look back on it, the mistake was like, that's almost like we've got two quarterbacks. My ass, you don't have one. Oh, he's got two positions. My ass, he doesn't have one. I don't want to hear any kind of short second, yes. Left, right, yes. First and right field or left field, okay. Right? We understand where the symmetry lies, particularly, the old National League clubs that, position flexibility is more important. We understand that. But I will never again, I have learned the lesson of MJ Melendez. If you leave camp with a guy who's going to catch and play the outfield, and again, we even, the guy for the Giants, Sable, there are a couple of guys, I always forget, he's on my fantasy team. I can't remember anyway. But he plays.
Probably having a great fantasy season for your fantasy team.
I was in second and injuries crushed me, and I'm now not paying attention to my team. I'll bring up his name here in a second. But that was one of the things for me. This team didn't fit, and we knew it, and we talked about it this spring, and we pulled our hair out, and and Rany, I was looking back at some things. We were even pissed about it, but we just kind of went, swept it under the rug.
I think part of it was I just thought the offense that he showed last year was so enticing that I felt like he would improve as a hitter to the point where it wouldn't matter. And that was foolish optimism on my part, because not every hitter develops that way, but also because the lack of a clear position was
right.
Inevitably.
Sorry, Blake Sable.
Blake Sable. Okay. All right. Gotcha. But the lack of a positional clarity, no doubt, was going to contribute to his difficulty on offense, because he had to really focus on like learning a new position on the fly at the same time that he was trying to develop as a hitter. And that rarely works when you push a young position player out of their comfort zone defensively. It usually has an effect on them offensively as well. And the Royals, we've said this many times, but the Royals have screwed up MJ Melendez's development as a player for over 2 years now. This started well before JJ Piccolo took over as general manager, but he did himself no favors this winter by not addressing the positional thing until, like you said, April, when they just realized, he wasn't hitting and he wasn't catching, and they're just like, okay, now we need to make him a single position guy.
Can we add another layer to MJ Melendez? And I am not qualified to be a pitching coach, and I'm not qualified to be a hitting coach, and I don't talk mechanics on here. I mean, I've talked to a lot of guys about the mechanics and things, but it's just something I think is foolish for guys in my position anyway to talk about, right? And anyone who's seen me play softball and seen what kind of swing I can put on the ball knows I'm living proof that I'm not a swing doctor. But now all the time, everybody talks about how busy his swing is, how many things are going on. And the last guy I remember that was, and it was in a moment of weakness. The Royals were going good, and Ned Yost let down his guard and said, because Eric Hosmer was hot for a minute, he's like, well, there's a lot going on with that swing, right? And then, Eric Hosmer really had about, 200 games of where he really put it together consistently, and that got him a big contract because it was always going to be coming. MJ Melendez is the same. I am of the opinion it's never, and it's not based on what I see in a swing. It's based upon when I've heard other people say those things about someone's swing. Billy Butler's toe tap. I was told, listen, Howard Baird told me he can hit, but he's going to get old quick. And he was talking about all the stuff that he's doing beforehand. And he's like, he's going to have to grow out of that, or he's going to be late, and he's going to all of a sudden he's going to be old quick. Like Albert Bear called that guy's career like it was nobody's business. And so I've heard enough guys. I don't see it. When I hear them say, people I trust, this guy's going to do this, and that was on the wall for MJ Melendez. And I don't know why I didn't read that.
Right. Well, if there's a lesson for the Royals, because part of what we're doing here is talking about where we got it wrong, but also it's like, what can we learn from this? What can the Royals learn from this? I think one of the things that we all need to learn from this is, like, don't fall in love with your prospects to the point where you are blind to their weaknesses or blind to the adjustments they're going to have to make. And it just, to me, it's like MJ Melendez, he had these flaws were all there as a prospect 2 years ago, but the strengths were there too, to the point where it's not like the Royals necessarily overrated him as a prospect. Like, he was a top 50 prospect, pretty much consensus across the board. But if the Royals had been looking at him rationally and looking at their team rationally, where you have a starting catcher that is the franchise, your franchise catcher, they would have seen that this is a guy we need to move now. They did it with Will Myers, a similar situation, a catcher / outfielder, right? Same kind of thing where it's like, the dude can hit. He has caught in the minor leagues. That combination makes you a hell of a prospect, but he might not be able to do both of those things at the same time in the major leagues. And if he's only doing one of those things, he's not nearly the prospect that everybody thinks he is. Let's trade him while we can for value. It worked so brilliantly with Will Myers that it made me look like a complete moron for doubting it, right? But they didn't do that with MJ Melendez. And at this point, we don't know what he is. We don't know what he will be. I don't know if he's ever going to be a productive player when you factor offense and defense in. But the Royals are also in a bind where it's like, they could trade him for 20% of the value of 2 years ago, or they could let him go out there again next year, because God knows they're not playing for anything next year. But they missed an opportunity. But the point is, learn from that. Don't do that again. If Blake Mitchell can hit, but is struggling, as a defender, you know what? Get him out from behind the plate quickly. Don't let him sit back there for the next 4 years. Or Carter Jensen, right? The Royals have, 2 more left-handed hitting catchers with great offensive profiles, such that if they can catch, they're amazing prospect. But if they can't, maybe not. So make up your mind, figure out what they are defensively, and move accordingly.
Or stop drafting guys who can't catch that are catching.
Certainly not with a top 8 pick.
How about identify a guy playing the position he's supposed to play, and that's fine if they're a shortstop and you're moving to third. I understand that. And if you're center and you're going to right or left, or even if you're a shortstop and you're eventually going, I understand the premium athlete that is the shortstop position. Okay, and the Royals have done that. Mike Moustakas was a shortstop, so on and so forth, right? But you know what I'm talking about. Like this whole, like, oh, we have a cat. Like, this has been an epidemic with this franchise, right? Like Mike Sweeney to MJ Melendez to.
Well, I was going to say, it's specifically catchers, because it's such a tough position to.
Well, because they Dayton Moore. That is a Dayton Moore thing. And listen, JJ Picoult. This looks like he's going right. We'll see what happens with Blake Mitchell. But we put a premium on catching. Dayton Moore said that all the time. In the draft, we always want to take good catching. We want depth of catching. It's so important to have good catching. You know what? There's not that depth of catching. Stop taking guys that you think are good, because you've decided that you want to take, in the old days, in a 50-round draft, you wanted to take 8 catchers. So you found a reason to like 8 catchers. There aren't 8 catchers in the draft. Stop taking them.
Well, not only that,
just sign Crash Davis to, in the minor leagues to accurately and efficiently and professionally handle your young pitchers. Stop. And maybe that's half the reason your pitching sucks, is because you've got all these guys that you want to believe are good catchers that are catching your guys and screwing them up as well.
Well, that's my point. It's like, not only stop taking all these catchers, but also stop drafting, quote unquote, my fingers are in the air, catchers who aren't going to catch at the major league level, right? Because if the whole idea of catchers being a commodity is that precisely because the ability to play defense, like to catch defensively, is so valuable that teams, covet those guys. But drafting a guy who's catching now and it looks like he can hit for catcher but in 5 years is a terrible defensive catcher at the major league level.
Right.
That's not a catcher. And that's to me, that's why the Blake Mitchell pick is so concerning. But my point is, who is the best catcher on this team right now? It's Freddie Fermin, a 28-year-old who worked his butt off to get to the major leagues and worked his butt off to improve as a hitter, but always had the defensive skills. And defensively, Freddie Fermin is actually a big chunk of his value is he's a good defensive catcher. And his bat may or may not be a fluke, but the defense I think is enough is going to keep him as a backup in the major leagues. But here's what's funny: the Royals just right now have 2 other guys on because Freddie Fermin broke his figure. So to get to the end of the season, the Royals brought up Logan Porter today, or it was reported that Logan Porter will be promoted tomorrow. Logan Porter was undrafted, all right, and worked his butt off to get to the major leagues as a catcher. The other guy who's on the roster, Tyler.
By the way, he's the kid who went to school across the street from the Royal Spring Training Complex, right?
Right. That's Dixie, and then it was at Dixie State, I think. And we've talked about it on the podcast before. I'm very happy he's getting a promotion. Reportedly, I haven't seen it officially confirmed because he's produced at the minor league level. It's a great story. It's a guy, even if he doesn't have a major league career, everybody, if you get a cup of coffee, that's something you'll live. It'll be a memory to last a lifetime. But Tyler Cropley's the guy they called up just out of desperation. It's a guy who was released, I think, by the Nationals 3 years ago. The Royals just picked him up. He's just made it to Double-A this year. Doesn't really hit. He can play defense, and so the Royals just want a guy who can play defense. Well, great, then draft a guy because he can play defense. But if you're drafting MJ Melendez and he can't play defense, and you leave him there anyway until you realize, oh, he can't play defense, you're doing yourself a disservice. You're doing the player a disservice. Yeah. I really hope Blake Mitchell is a great defensive catcher, but it's concerning because I feel like he was taken because they see his bat as something to develop into an elite offensive for a catcher. But if he can't catch, he might just be an okay outfielder, and then you've wasted a top 10 pick on a guy who's not really moving the needle.
By the way, the Kaufman Corner podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete with free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer, helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. There was, I'm not sure, I apologize if I'm saying this, but there was a couple of spots left for you to get your seal coating done before the weather turns. Weekends are booking up fast. Call right now if you need that done. If you're a property manager, 816-484-3338, online at GannAsphalt.com. All right, what else? We're run short on time before too long, but what else did we miss and can we learn?
I mean, I think the lack of talent obviously is the easy thing to say on the pitching side, but specifically with the rotation, like it was basically worse than we thought at every point, right? I mean, they brought in. We can talk all you want about the pitcher who I won't throw his name out there, but like they brought back Zach Greinke, and Greinke is certainly better than his record would suggest, but he is on the downswing. Like he has not been the guy they were hoping.
And that's one of the things. Like they locked in on Zach because they like Zach and they wanted to bring Zach back, but at 39 years old, we think he's a tireless wonder. And he has logged 126 innings. He's going to be second on the team in innings pitched, I believe. Or Singer probably is, now that I think about that. But he's going to be up there. He's going to log close to 140 innings when it's all said and done, if not 140 innings. But I think they need to move on from that.
You're breaking my heart, Soren. You're right, but you're still breaking.
I'm breaking my own heart to say it, but like that is. He's not the reason why they are where they are. And his numbers, the guy you're talking about is Jordan Lyles, including Jordan Lyles. However, either one of them would be great, but both of their numbers would be better if they were a better defense. They didn't have to go deeper, all those things. But that combination right there, they have to get better pitching. And I'll even throw like those guys, we won't go round and round like we've done many times. And I'm seeing, by the way, several people are going round and round on that subject right now in the chat room. By the way, if you catch us via the podcast, we stream live Sunday nights at 10 o'clock, and you can be a part of the chat that's going on right now, and some venom back and forth with some of our great listeners here. But, I'll say this, the Brad Keller part, though, that like those two, at least it was like, we know we're not good enough. We need some guys to try to eat some innings. And both of those guys did it. The Brad Keller part, that to me is a bigger deal. That is loving your own guy. You got all the way to the end, and it's like it has not worked for 5 years. And I know the idea was new coaching staff. Let's see if we can reach him. because we think there's talent there. You couldn't. You couldn't. You go that far, you can't keep going down that road. There was no reason. Now part of it's because they can't develop pitching. So somebody's got to take the ball. But Brad Keller was the worst one. Who are the 5 guys they left spring training with? Jordan Lyles, Zach Greinke, Brady Singer, Brad Keller, and Chris Bubich. The worst guy of the bunch was Brad Keller because he kept pitching. Second worst was Bubich because he gave him like 3 starts, right? And then,
well, I mean, that's what this ultimately comes down to. Is we talk about the hitting development, the 2018 pitching draft. I mean, we've spent so much time arguing about Brady Singer when the reality is Brady Singer is not the problem of that. He's actually the closest thing to a solution in that draft. But when you look at Daniel Lynch and Chris Bubich and, of course, Jackson Kowar, I mean, it's just like none of those guys have developed. This was finally supposed to be the year that you would see results there. And so ultimately, I mean, what the thing that ties all of this together, this whole disappointment, is the Royals have done an unbelievably bad job of drafting since they won the World Series. And really starting even before that. But this year is the comeuppance you get for like an 8-year stretch of just not drafting well. You didn't miss on the no-brainer with Bobby Witt. Great. And there are isolated bright spots here. But like when you're putting together a list of bright spots and Nicky Lopez is on that list, that's a sign that you just haven't drafted very well. If Nicky Lopez is one of your most successful draft picks in that stretch,
he is their single most successful draft pick by far.
Yeah.
Sam McDowell pointed that out. Like when the Royals were touting some numbers about their drafts, it was all largely tied up in Nicky Lopez, a player.
Yeah, I mean now Bobby Witt's moved ahead, but between like 2012 and 2018 or whatever, Nicky Lopez has like the most wins above replacement of anybody, and that for a team that was drafting in the top half so many times, that's unconscionable.
But I don't want to go by Singer because Singer's part of the problem too. Not in the sense that, yes, he's the only one they're getting anything from. He's a first-round pick. He's a later first-round pick. What they're getting from him is fine. That's a quality pick. He wasn't a top 5 pick. He wasn't supposed to be an ace. But where they're guilty and the mistake that I made is assuming he's going to be better. He is just an innings eater. Let's quit calling it. I pointed this out earlier this year, and I think I said it here on this. I know I said it on my radio show. He is on the downslope of his career right now. Right? The idea that better days lie ahead with Brady Singer is not true. Based upon we charted the what are quality years, and they come from guys that are now younger than Brady Singer. The bulk of those innings, like we did, what year, guys? And I can't remember what our criteria was. Maybe I can find the spreadsheet we cooked up. But we looked at what years, what age do pitchers have? 180 innings. And, the quality years.
Right.
Singer is now on the downslope. He's in the best period. He's in the 5-year period, but he's in like year 4 and 5 of the age group to do it. So the idea, and this is the mistake I made, and I think they are, that more is there from Singer. And that's why we don't need, if this was their reason for not getting into a deeper, more expensive pitching pool, because he's going to be our ace. Right?
I mean, if
that is
the one thing I'll give them credit, if what you're saying is true, is at least they didn't go out and give him a long-term contract after last season, right? Like that's something to keep that in mind. Yeah, everything you're saying is true. I just feel like focusing on Singer is like it just gives a pass to all the other picks that were much worse than him. Like the one thing I will give them credit for with Singer is that you went into the draft, the consensus, like the draft board had him as a potential top 5 pick. Like he fell in the draft. And you can understand why in retrospect, like he didn't have that third pitch. But the talent was so good that like the Royals saw a guy. It's not like football where you can trade up or whatever. Like you if there's a guy that you absolutely believe is the best player in the draft and he's out there one pick before yours, you can't do anything about it. Right? It's a very few picks you can trade. But the point, so when they had no way of knowing he would fall to them. There was no way of them moving up to get him, but they didn't look a gift horse in the mouth. When he got to them at 18, they're like, we don't know why he's fallen this far, but we're not going to screw this up. He's the right guy to take here, the obvious guy. And okay, he hasn't been a great pick, but he's been better than just about every other first round pick they've had in the last decade. And that says something because since Brady Singer, okay, Bobby Witt, that was a consensus pick. Bobby Witt, if I, me with my Baseball America subscription, and reading Keith Law and Kylie McDaniel, with that pick, I would have taken Bobby Witt. But every draft since then, the Royals' first-round pick has been somebody who was not the consensus best player on the board. How has that worked out for them? How has it worked out for them? Okay, Frank Mazzucato, fine, you're saving money. Gavin Cross, did that work out? Has that worked out so far? Blake Mitchell might work out, but it's been 2 months, and there's 7 guys drafted after him who are doing much better. And yeah, they're college guys, but they're in. Some of them are in the majors, some of them are in 3 of them are in Double A. And of course, then there's Asa Lacy. Asa Lacy was not, he was the top pitcher on the list, but pitchers are always more scary than hitters. There were other players they could have taken there. So at least if there's something the Royals should learn here, it's the consensus is the consensus for a reason. You can buck the consensus, but have a good reason for doing so. And so far, when the Royals have gone away from the industry consensus, they have been burned. And that may say something about the people in the room who are making those scouting decisions. And that may be something that JJ Picollo should take a really hard look at this winter, because the number one reason the Royals are where they are, and a team like the Orioles is where they are, is because look at the Orioles drafts over the last 5 years, 6 years, and look at the Royals draft. That's really 80% of the difference.
Well, and I'll tell you that's the other thing, and I'll come back to it. And I mentioned it. The draft is we whistled by that is the point. You can't have Asa Lacy. You can't have all these guys that are giving you nothing. You can't overcome it without a massive payroll. You can't do it. The big market clubs pick at the bottom, and when they get one right in the 20-something, with the 20-something overall pick, it's celebrated and look how good their farm system is. But largely, they buy their way past that, or they in their moments of okay, we're missing here. We're only going to win 78 games. They trade Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander for premium prospects, right? But they bought. They essentially, and that's the most glaring example of a team that not only traded somebody they had signed, but also ate tons of money in their contract. But lots of the best prospects for the Yankees come from when they finally go, this isn't our year, we're bailing out. And they move it. And the Royals don't have that option. So it's even more critical that they draft. And that's where we identify, we're very much aware of how bad their drafts have been, but they can't overcome it. And that's some people talked about so what, no playoffs till 2030? I don't think that's the case, but it's time for this organization to recognize maybe they do need to be bad for 2 more years. Nobody wants to hear that, but top 2 more top 5 picks would really help this organization a lot.
It very much would. Now, of course, the lottery makes things a lot more difficult because you're no guarantee you'll have a top 1, top 2 pick. But that's the difference. Drafting first or even second, in the year where the Royals got Bobby Witt, because there were 2 players out there. If they were drafting third, they might have gotten a complete turkey because they might have gone off the board and found somebody that didn't pan out. When they've drafted 4th, 7th, 9th, and now 8th, they've have not hit. The Orioles had the first pick. I got Adley Rutschman. They also had the first pick 3 years later. I got Jackson Holliday, who's the number 1 player, number 1 prospect in baseball right now. But in the Asa Lacy year, they had the number 2 pick. And what's interesting is they completely went off the board with their pick. The second pick in the draft, they took a player named, I don't even know how to say his name, Keston Kierstad, I believe. I'm hoping I'm saying it right. College outfielder. Real surprise pick. And again, it's if you're going against the consensus, you better have a damn good reason. One of the reasons why I'm so, admiring of what the Orioles have done is that when they go off the board, they know what they're doing. Because in retrospect, basically what they were looking at, that year, that was the 2020 draft, the pandemic year draft. That draft sucked. There are just some years where you just have no talent. This year's draft, 3 years later, because all those high school players who never got an opportunity to have a full, senior season, so they didn't get evaluated by scouts, and there was only a 5-round draft, so a lot of them weren't drafted. All those guys went to college, and this year was a historically great draft. The reason for that is so much of that talent wasn't identified 3 years ago. So it was a terrible draft where even the best players in that draft, Spencer Torkelson was the number 1 pick that year. And he's been a huge disappointment for a number 1 overall pick. Asa Lacy, we don't know where he is right now. The guy I would have taken, Austin Martin, better than Asa Lacy. He's in AAA now and gets on base. He has no power. Keston Kierstad was drafted, and missed his first full season. I think he had a heart condition. I mean, there was some like non-baseball related injury, and already he's behind the 8 ball. He's one of the top, I don't know, 50 prospects. He's in AAA ranking. Like, if it weren't for the fact that the Orioles have like already 7 guys on their roster under the age of 25 who are just hitting the crap out of the ball, he might already be in the major leagues. But the point is, that one pick where they went against the industry, picked a guy nobody thought would be a top 5, maybe even top 10 pick, and now looks like a better prospect than any of the guys taken around him in the top 5. That's how you build a team that might win 100 games in the American League East with a low payroll. The Orioles don't have a high payroll because all their guys are young and cheap. That's what the Royals need to be doing, and they're not. They're drafting guys that are not the consensus and missing on them. And like you said, there's no way for a team in the Royals position with the Royals payroll resources to overcome that. If you do not draft well and you're not finding talent from Latin America well, you're screwed. It's just over.
We'll see how they all do in the playoffs, but let's point out Tampa is only 3 games behind the Orioles, and they haven't picked high for years.
Right, but they also they draft okay and they trade better than
and
they just find.
No, but I'm just like, when we sit here and act like, okay, it is going to be 2030 because the Royals need 6 more top 5 picks before they can get there. That's not true. It helps. And the Orioles, and that it is the story of the Orioles. If you're going to be down there, get it right, because there are good players available. And, listen, I've talked to people in that front office, and they are aware. I know this. I know that there is conversations that have been had about, we're not acquiring tools anymore. Like, this is not about, we'll look at this guy. We're not justifying the pick based upon tools. We need production. We need, real baseball skills that can be applied to the field. So I do believe it's being preached. Is it being executed by the scouts?
Right.
I don't know. And I think we're going to find out which ones they don't think are. We both would be very surprised, and I think certainly disappointed if there aren't some changes made on that side.
Yeah, some major changes. And what my understanding of teams now, I mean, look, every team has an analytics department. Every team understands the importance of production over just tools. But what separates organizations today is how that is communicated throughout the organization, how it's implemented, and having everyone on board. Everyone has, but if has an analytics department, but if your scouts aren't communicating with them and learning from them, and there isn't feedback going both ways, because you can, the analytics guys can learn from the scouts that, look, yeah, this guy's got great numbers, but he won't hit at the major league level because he does A, B, and C. There has to be that interplay between both sides. And the best organizations, they do that so well. And the worst organizations don't. They pay lip service to the analytics, and they come up with all these, fancy charts or whatever that nobody on the baseball ops side actually looks at. And, so the Royals, I know JJ knows it's important, but if you don't have everybody down to like the pitching coach and rookie ball paying attention to this stuff and caring about this stuff and implementing this stuff, then it's not going to work. And so, yeah, you've got the thing that, in retrospect, the thing that we should have been more concerned about last winter was the fact that while they did bring in Brian Sweeney and Zach Bove and, Quatrero, there was very little turnover in the minor league coaching ranks. And I think, as much as we talked about the major league level, the minor leagues, being a disaster this season and having a terrible farm system still, I don't think that's a coincidence.
No, and I agree, and I think we looked past that. But I will say this: JJ Piccolo has said on my radio show, and John Sherman has said, that our focus was to get the big league coaching staff right, and there's only so much you can do in an offseason, basically serving notice that changes are going to come to the lower levels. I will not forget that. Maybe they think that was, just going to get them off the hook at that moment, but I won't forget that. And if there are not changes, then we've got real problems.
Right. That is definitely what you and I will be looking at very early on in the summer, before the free agent season hits. And frankly, free agent season matters less to the Royals than this coaching carousel does. Like, that's what I want to see. Because the one positive thing we can take from this season, I would say, is that where the Royals have implemented changes in development, there has been some fruit being borne. I think Cole Ragans is obviously the most dramatic case of this. But they brought the one coach they brought in from the on the hitting side or position player side, Jose Alguacil, brought in from the Nationals as an infield coach, And gee, suddenly the infield defense got a lot better, especially your cornerstone player, Bobby Witt. Like where JJ has made changes, implemented those changes, we've seen improvement. Carlos Hernandez, before whatever happened to him in the last month, if he's pitching hurt or just, he's tired or whatever, but like you went from being below replacement level in the past 2 years to being maybe the best, one of the best relievers on the team, the first half of the season. Like we have seen, and we've seen guys, Chris Movich before he got hurt, yeah, it's a very small sample size, but like he was doing new things and they were working. So I'm hoping the Royals have seen enough positive feedback from, we are trying to teach guys new pitches and look at, ways to increase their velocity and look at the way that their pitches play together in terms of the angle and how much movement and actually using data to inform pitching decisions. It has worked. As bad as the season has been, they have had successes. They need to do more of that, and they need to make that, like implement that throughout the minor league system. I know they've talked about that. I know there are a lot of quotes about they're looking at that at the minor league level. And frankly, I think on the pitching side, we have seen more minor league success stories this year. It's the hitting side where it's just been bad. And there's only one, Alex Zumwalt's in the major leagues. There's only one Drew Saylor in the minor leagues. Maybe they just need more, hitting gurus like at the minor league level to help with that. I don't know, but they have a long ways to go in that regard.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. Anything else?
No, I think that's enough. That's enough positivity for one one podcast.
I do think that there are lessons that were there to be learned, and I'm optimistic that they have learned them. And I do think that as we sit here, we can point out all the mistakes. I do think that in one off season, I'm not going to say they're going to be a playoff team. They're not, but I think they can put together a team. And that's the one thing I'll leave it. Like this, the Island of Misfit Toys crap's got to stop. And I think that part, they recognize it. And I think Matt Quatraro, now having been around and probably just based upon his personality, I think Matt Quatraro is going to have to be a louder voice in the room. Because I don't think there's any way that this is the team that Matt Quatraro wanted. Not that he, there was, it may not have been possible. But I think Matt, like there was no option of here's a guy who can field and hit in the outfield. They don't have it. You could have one or the other. Nate Eaton can go catch it, or Edward Olivares can hit it, but we can't put them together. I think that there will be a stronger voice from him. Like, listen, boys, I just suffered through this crap night in, night out. Here's what we got to do. And so I think now they're back. They're not new. There will be expectations. Whatever they think they need to do, they can do. And they will at least be cutting bait with Brad Keller. They already cut bait with Hunter Dozier. They're like, I think that they will be more empowered. And the Adalberto Mondesi thing didn't blow up on them. Right. And I think that's important because had that blown up on them, nobody gets sent packing. And now I think they will get to that decision quicker. And I think that'll be a good thing.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think Quatraro, like I give Quatraro a mulligan for this year. I mean, speaking of the Orioles, Brandon Hyde in 2 of his first 3 years lost 108 games or more. Yeah. And now it looks like freaking Earl Weaver. It's like if the talent's not there, the talent's not there.
Yeah, you can't manage your way past inferior talent.
Right. But you have to, but it is important, I think, incumbent on him to establish a culture of accountability for what the Royals are looking for and to value the what the data says, as well as in a way that the Royals haven't done before. I mean, one of the things I'm still disappointed about the season is they're second to last in the league in walks drawn. Like, you guys talk a good game about the importance of plate discipline and patience. I want to see those results as well.
That would be better if Vinny Pasquantino hadn't gotten hurt.
It would be, but I mean, how much of a difference? I don't know. I look at that and look, they're going to lose 110 games. They're not good at anything other than stealing bases, which they're always elite at. They're great, but they've got a lot of weaknesses to paper in. Ultimately, it's a talent issue. You talk about like, I think it's very important for the Royals to make all their decisions with the long term in focus, like not thinking about they can improve next year necessarily, but an easy way to improve with that, which would not necessarily impair their ability to actually be a contender in, let's say, 4 years or whatever, is to lean into the defense motif. The one thing that has dramatically improved over the course of the season has been their defense. Getting Hunter Dozier out of there, and going with Michael Garcia has, improved the infield defense quite a bit. Letting Olivares and MJ Melendez play less in the outfield has probably helped out there. Like, they have good defenders, they have terrible defenders. They're trying to get the good defenders on the field more. But I think if you're going to be bad, if you're trying to develop pitching and you're going to probably not contend anyway, try to field as good a defensive team next year as possible, and at least give some of your pitchers that you're going to start bringing up a chance, the best possible chance to succeed.
All right. Remember, we're brought to you by GAN Asphalt and Concrete. Why risk liability, accidents in your parking lot? You can get your parking lot restriped today. Brightly striped lots, cut down on accidents, keep your parking lot safe as possible. And with free consultations and no commissions, in-house crews, and every project coming with a written warranty. Why wouldn't you call GAN right now? They've been solving parking lot problems since 1994. Call 816-484-3338. Find them online at GANasphalt.com for the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli. I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on Kaufman Corner.